Today, we will discuss topics such as the Sukshmantardasha sub-period of Venus within the Antardasha of Ketu, as described in Chapter 62, Verse 6 of the Parashara Hora Shastra. We are diving straight into a highly specific, mathematically rigorous branch of Vedic astrology today. We aren't just looking at what the ancient sages said in passing. Instead, we're going to decode the precise chronological mechanics of how these microscopic time periods actually govern human experience.
Here is our agenda for this explainer. First, a linguistic breakdown of the verse. Then, we'll look at house effects and interpretations, followed by dasha period calculations and the Kalachakra dasha flow cycle. Finally, we'll cover the astrological significance, remedies, and wrap up with a summary.
Let's start with Section 1, Linguistic Breakdown. Before we can even think about applying the complex math or the remedies, we absolutely have to establish the literal meaning of our foundational text.
Let's listen to the original Sanskrit verse detailing the specific Venus Sukshmantardasha within the Ketu period. Pay attention to the phonetics here. Arogyam dana labham cha vipra guru jana bhakti swajana samayoga ketu shukrantare bhavet. This beautiful verse provides the precise description of what happens when the celestial node of Ketu unites with the planetary energy of Venus.
Now, let's break this down word by word. We call this the Padacheheta. It's basically like deconstructing the Sanskrit syntax piece by piece so we truly understand what's going on. Starting off, we have arogyam, which translates directly to freedom from diseases. Then, dhanalabham means gains of wealth. Vipra refers to Brahmins or the learned scholars of the community. Guru means the preceptor or the teacher, and bhakti translates to devotion. Next, swajana indicates members of one's own family, and samayoga means a union or a coming together. Finally, the phrase Ketu Shukrantare anchors all of these outcomes strictly within the specific time frame of the Ketu and Venus period.
So, what does this all mean when we put it together? The synthesis gives us a very clear, simple English translation. During the microscopic Sukshma period of Venus, while inside the much larger period of Ketu, the individual is slated to experience freedom from diseases, gains of wealth, deep devotion towards Brahmins and their preceptor, and a joyous union with members of their family. As you can see, it is an overwhelmingly auspicious period. Well, that is, provided the planetary placements actually support it.
And that brings us right to Section 2, House Effects and Interpretations. The translation we just did gives us a great baseline, but the Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra demands that we go deeper. We have to examine the physical placement of Venus across the bhavas, or the astrological houses, to figure out the practical dashapala, the actual real-world results of the period. This is where the brilliant duality of Vedic astrology really shines. If Venus is well placed, say it's sitting comfortably in a kendra, which is an angle, or a trikona, a trine, it basically guarantees those auspicious results we just translated. You get the wealth, the health, the family harmony, the whole shebang. However, the text is very clear that if Venus happens to fall in the 6th, 8th, or 12th houses from the ascendant or the dasa lord, you need to brace yourself for distressful outcomes. Why? Because the 6th house brings enemies and disease, the 8th house brings sudden obstacles, and the 12th house indicates loss and isolation. So you see, the baseline text assumes a positive placement, but the specific bhava placement alters the manifestation entirely.
Let's actually look at the primary source directly to prove this. As detailed in Chapter 54, the rules regarding dasha effects show us that malefic associations dramatically change the results. The text clearly states that if there are malefics in the 8th, 5th, and 9th from a dasha rasi, the effects of that dasha will be distressful. It gets even more specific. If a dasha rasi is owned by a benefic planet but occupied by a malefic, you might get favorable effects in the first part of the period, but they're going to turn adverse in the latter half. This foundational structural rule applies directly to our Venus Sukshma period.
Moving on to Section 3, Dasha Period Calculations. Okay, so we know what the period means, but how do we actually locate this microscopic period in a person's life? For this, we have to shift our focus from interpretation to rigorous mathematical calculation.
The text gives us a very strict sequential formula to derive the exact time frame of a Sukshma dasa. Here is how you do it. Step 1. Identify the total duration of the Pratyantar dasa period in question. This is usually converted into Gatikas, which are the ancient Vedic units of time. Step 2. Multiply this duration by the specific planet's allotted dasa years in the Vimshatri system. For Venus, that number is 20 years. Step 3. Divide that entire product by 120. Run those numbers and you get the exact precise length of the Sukshmantardasha.
To put that into perspective, let's look at how the formula is applied in the actual text of chapter 62. It reads, the Sukshmantardasha is arrived at by multiplying the periods of Pratyantardasha separately for each planet by the dasi years of that planet, and then by dividing the product by 120. The text uses a great example, calculating the sun's sukshma inside its own pratyantar. You take the 324 gatikas of the pratyantar, multiply that by the sun's 6 dasa years, which gives you 1,944. Then, dividing 1,944 by 120 yields 16 gatikas and 12 palas. Now you might be wondering, why divide by 120? That number is absolutely crucial, because 120 represents the maximum human lifespan in the Vimshatari Dasha system.
Let's dive into Section 4, Kala Chakra Dasha Flow Cycle. To fully grasp the time cycles described in this text, we have to understand the highly complex Savya and Apasvavya astronomical flow cycles. These operate right alongside the dasha calculations we just did.
The sage Parashara actually gives us step-by-step instructions on the structural setup required to build these charts. Imagine drawing it out. Step 1, you draw vertical lines. Step 2, you draw intersecting horizontal lines. Step 3, this grid creates exactly 12 equal apartments, or cells, for the charts. We have to construct two distinct charts here. First, the Savya chart, which represents the forward or direct astronomical flow. And second, the Apasvya chart, which represents the reverse or indirect flow. Looking directly at the Sanskrit text from the manuscript, the verses dictate the exact placement of the zodiac signs into these 12 apartments we just drew. Starting from the second apartment in each chart, we fix the signs, beginning with Aries. Once those signs are locked in, the text guides us to incorporate the specific nakshatras, the lunar mansions, into this matrix. This is literally how the cosmic wheel of time is established mathematically on paper.
The allocation instructions for these nakshatras are extremely specific. The text states, write Ashwini etc. nakshatras in the Savya chakra and Rohini etc. 13 nakshatras into the Apasvya chakra. By following this prescribed order, we map exactly 15 nakshatras into the Savya chart and 12 into the Apasvya chart. Ashwini governs the direct, forward-moving cycle, while Rohini kicks off the reverse cycle. This precise mapping is absolutely essential if you want to understand the underlying energy of any given planetary period, including our Venus Sukshma.
Now, the most crucial takeaway within this Kala Chakra construction is the differentiation between Deha, which means the physical body, and Jiva, which means the life force or the soul. The text specifies that in the first pada or quarter of the Ashwini Nakshatra, the sign of Aries indicates Deha, while Sagittarius indicates Jiva. Understanding which sign rules the physical body versus which rules the life force is a real game changer. It allows the astrologer to pinpoint whether a planetary period is going to hit the native physically, spiritually, or both.
That brings us to Section 5, Astrological Significance and Remedies. We're going to transition from the deep technical construction of charts and math and bring it back to the practical implications of Chapter 62, Verse 6, as well as the prescribed remedial measures. When we synthesize all of this text, the practical implications of a well-placed Venus Sukshmantardasha within Ketu are truly profound. In real terms, this period triggers financial gains and wealth accumulation. It brings about a renewed sense of family harmony and even the reunion of separated loved ones. Philosophically, think about what's happening here. The union of Ketu, which is the planet of liberation, with Venus, the planet of devotion. This combination sparks a deep spiritual awakening, specifically manifesting as devotion to Brahmins and to one's preceptors. It also grants freedom from disease, which aligns perfectly with the overarching auspicious nature of the original verse we read.
But what if things aren't perfectly aligned? If the mathematics and the Baba placements indicate that Venus is afflicted, like if it's situated in that 6th, 8th, or 12th house we talked about earlier, the text doesn't just leave you stranded. It prescribes specific textual remedies to mitigate the harshness of the period. According to Chapter 54 of the text, to regain good health and overcome physical distress caused by an afflicted Venus, the remedial measure to adopt is giving a cow or female buffalo in charity. Furthermore, the inherent remedy found right within our primary verse is the active practice of devotion to Brahmins and serving one's preceptor. Doing these acts consciously harmonizes those conflicting Venusian and Ketu energies.
We have now reached Section 6, Summary. Let's synthesize our entire analysis of the text, the math, and the charts so we have a complete picture of this microscopic astrological event.
Today, we completely deconstructed Chapter 62, Verse 6. We saw how the literal Sanskrit guarantees health, wealth, and spiritual devotion. We learned the precise mathematical formula, dividing the product of the pratyanta duration and dasha years by 120 to locate this exact period in a person's timeline. We mapped out the underlying cosmic energies using the Savya and Apasphiya Kala Chakra charts, meticulously tracking Deha and Jiva. And finally, we saw how the physical placement of Venus in the astrological houses dictates whether the native will easily experience that promised family harmony, or if they'll require the charitable remedies, like giving a cow, to mitigate physical distress. The mathematics directly inform the interpretive outcomes. It leaves us with a truly profound question to ponder. If our cosmic timelines can be mapped down to such microscopic fractions of a day, how much of our daily destiny is written in the stars, and how much is shaped by the remedies and actions we choose to practice?
A humble request from the Vedmata AI family. If you found our presentation enlightening, please share our video widely so that authentic knowledge from Indian Vedic texts can reach the masses. Let us all come together to participate in this Gyan Yagyan, sacrificial offering of knowledge. Har Har Mahadev!